We would like to see Onauna. Maka'ala and Michelle, let me know that your mics are working.
Mine's working.
All right, good.
I need warming up again, or is it warmed up?
You're good. You're better this time.
Yeah, it's just when I first turned the computer on, it's old like me. It just needs to warm up.
Okay. Take that. Hi, Onauna.
Hi, sorry about that. My Zoom decided to update right when I was joining, so.
And is that Ron on the ERP camera or hey,
Yes.
how are you, man?
Hey, okay. Fine, nice to see you.
Yeah, what happened to our hair?
Yeah, it comes with age. At least I
Yeah.
still got stuff.
I haven't seen you in so long. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. But I recognize you. It's a mask stuff though. Okay, so I think we have a quorum here and we have our guests. And so I will call the meeting to order and introduce everybody. This is the meeting of the Exemptions Committee of the Environmental Advisory Council. I'm Ron Terry, the chair. So I'll go in the order that I have here. Maka'ala.
Present and alone in the room.
And I'm alone in the room too. Thank you. Okay, Michelle.
Michelle Lefebvre, alone in the room.
Onauna.
Onauna phone, and I'm alone. Thank you.
Okay, and in our staff, I think Les is in the room with you, right? Ron?
Yeah, and there's Ron who can introduce himself.
Right. I'll and then Ron Sato, please explain who you are and why you're here.
Ron Osaka with HHF planners here assisting HPHA.
Okay, great, thank you. And then we have from HPHA, Hakeem Wansafi, I believe. I hope I'm pronouncing that close.
You're the first one who didn't torture it. So
Oh,
yeah.
thank you. I've seen you on TV plenty of times, so it's nice to see you in person.
Nice to see you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And then we have Dean Watasi.
Aloha, Dean Watasi from HHFDC. Thank you.
Thanks for coming again, Dean. Let's see, I think on our, I always have trouble doing multiple documents on my screens. I think I need about 4 monitors, but okay, we have first on the agenda here is the HHFDC, and I think that's good because it'll probably be the fastest of the two. So for everybody's edification, of course, they came to us 2 months ago with their list, and it was published in the September 23rd environmental notice. Les, I'm assuming we didn't get any comments.
Yeah, that's correct. No comments.
Okay. I don't know why nobody likes to comment, but we didn't get any comments on your list from any agencies, from any public. And no one else on the council forwarded anything to me. Council members, did any of you have any questions or comments on the list?
Ron, sorry, I wasn't, on the committee when this came through, and maybe this is just a question, that I can ask and you guys can answer. But as I looked at the two lists, I noticed for the HHFDC under exemption type 6, which had to do with the demolition of structures, except those that are listed on the National Register. And or the Hawaii Register of Historic Places. I guess what I thought about was the use of structures in that language. I mean, are we meaning buildings or structures in the sense that buildings have 4 walls and structures typically by definition under those, historic preservation laws don't. I noticed in comparison, the HPHA one talked about buildings or structures, and that this one only talked about structures. And maybe that's just, it's meant in a general sense and not in the historic preservation language.
Let me be an originalist and go back to the list and see what it says.
Okay.
It's in,
Yeah, I think in subsection A of that exemption, it does say structures such as building sheds, warehouses, storage tanks, reservoirs, and similar structures. So there's some stuff from context, maybe not quite as clear as a definition as you want, Michelle, but I don't think it's meant to be, well, and we'll let, of course, Dean can chime in, a structure meaning with 4 walls.
Because we say structures listed on the National Register, or then a structure as listed under those places means something, right? It is a specific term with those laws and regulations.
well, it does come from our rules. So
Okay.
what they're doing is quoting our rules.
Yeah.
More or less.
Right.
Instead of saying such as buildings. So, I mean, they followed what we asked them to do.
Yeah. Okay. Again, I wasn't there for that round, and I apologize for jumping in now, but.
No, it's good. It's a good question. We'll maybe bring that up sometime when we're talking about changing our rules or something.
But I did notice, like I said, and you're right, Honana does say there, in the part 1 actions, it defines it. And I noticed in the HPH1, which we'll come to later, they said buildings or structures. So, and then just one more point on that, in terms of being significant, or a non-significant structure, as listed on the National Register or the Hawaii Register. The National Register doesn't have a significance determination, where the Hawaii Register does. And I understand the intent of the wording, and I'm not suggesting that we change it at this time, but just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I mean, for anything listed on the register is just listed. It doesn't matter if it's significant or not. It's listed, so it's protected. So
Right.
yeah, it's probably
The intent is
redundant, I would say.
Mhm.
But I'll ask Dean if he has any explanation for any of this.
No explanation at this point. Maybe that's something we can take a look at the next round of update. We can have better language, maybe.
I think it's very specific just to those cultural resource laws. I think the intent is there, right? These are structures or buildings not listed on either the National Register or the Hawaii Register. I think the intent is there. It's just a little bit pedantic on the language.
Yeah,
I'm married to an archaeologist, so we talk about
yeah, right. Well, I think when we look at it, I think they're probably just trying to, whoever wrote this, I believe, was trying to make it clearer what being listed meant. So,
and I think if the language just said includes, items that are not or structures or buildings that are not listed on, I think that will be fine. I think just the term non-significant isn't accurate for the National Register, but.
So in terms of process, because I think, this list is actually suggested to go to the council for concurrence today, since it already went out for public comment.
Right.
I think that's an important point that you raised, Michelle. Thanks for picking that out. I mean, could we, I guess to Dean, I mean, I assume you guys wanted to use the term non-significant for a reason as applied to the Hawaii Register, right? So is there a way that we can propose an amendment that would work? Maybe just say, includes only non-significant structures, i.e. for the Hawaii Register, and then, or is not listed on the National Register. I mean, is that something that makes sense?
That makes sense to me.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
that's
Michelle, does that, kind of fix your concern?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, I think the term non-significant, you can think of it in a general way, right? Like these aren't significant, but since in that, cultural resource protection world, that is a specific terms, just like we have significance in the environmental world as well. It means something for the National Register, but it's not a technical term, and it's not a designation that historic properties get under the National Register.
Yeah, but of course, this isn't chapter 6E. It's not section 106.
Understood.
And we don't have to meet the rigor of their definitions in ours. To me, what we're looking at here is a distinction between part 1 and part 2 actions, and there is some ambiguity there. One says it's only non-significant structures, and the one says, well, non-significant structures that require further consideration. In my mind, part 1 almost includes part 2, right? Because 1 is all non-significant structures, and 2 is non-significant structures that require further consideration. So that's really a subset of the ones listed in part 1.
And I guess this is all built on the fact that these projects obviously are going to go. I mean, there's state money involved, and so they're going to go through 6E, and so they're going to go through an evaluation process. And so we're excluding the fact that these things have already been, or we're excluding properties that have not been evaluated. We're assuming they've already gone through an evaluation process, right, through 6E, and now have been determined to be significant or non-significant.
Well, I mean,
we're not including properties that haven't been evaluated.
That's a separate law, and we're not trying to integrate chapter 6E and chapter 343.
Right.
They have to comply with chapter 6E.
Right.
That's separate.
Agreed.
So what we are saying is that if they can demolish structures that are not listed on the National Register under an exemption. So that doesn't mean that they can do it under 6E. So we're not trying to dictate how the 6E review goes.
Oh yeah, sorry. No, I just meant that when we say that it's a non-significant property or historic property, that we're saying it's already been evaluated.
Well, we don't use non-significant, I don't think. Let me go back and look at the list. No, that's not a term from us. That's a term that they introduced, right? So I would think it would be probably, although it might be internally good for Dean and his crew to think about it this way, because not everybody understands what the registers are, and this helps them visualize it. Probably better for us to take out the word non-significant and instead focus on the distinctions between the part 1 and the part 2. And that is, part 2 are things that need some more examination. And I want to congratulate HHFDC and Dean for making these distinctions here. And I think we might have talked about it a little bit or something, that let's say there could be structures that have, even though they're going to get exempt, they might need an an actual exemption notice. Somebody's got to go look at certain aspects of them and not just say, no, just tear it down. We don't even have to do 343. We don't need any notice. So if there was a way to change that wording to take out non-significant and incorporate some of the language from part 2 up into part 1, you know what I'm talking about, Dean? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I can kind of see that point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe a suggestion might be to change includes only structures not listed, right, on the National Register or Hawaii Register of Historic
Well,
Places.
that's already up in
And-
exemption type 6, right?
Right. So I mean, you would want it to mirror that. And then you said if you want it pulled up and from part 2, so you'd say that and does not require further consideration.
Yeah, that's what
As
I'm
like the
saying.
potential- Yeah, okay. And then
And-
part 2 can stay as is.
I would just take, in fact, I would, take out kind of every single word in part one actions.
Okay.
From includes down to the parentheses behind places, and just take the language from part two and bring it up and make it the opposite. It doesn't require further analysis. You don't need to repeat the part about the historic places because it's already there right above there.
Okay. That's fine with me too. I think that would work.
I think maybe it's, Dean, do you think that is it possible for you where you are right now to make that change? And when we bring it before the council, we'll say he's already done it at our suggestion and it will be incorporated.
Yeah, I have the Word file, so I can make the change.
Great.
And then so I'll make the change now and then forward it to you, I guess, yeah. But basically, we are taking the language, the statement from part two, bringing it up to part one, but making it the opposite.
Right, the reverse, and then
The
just
reverse.
all that stuff that you have in well, and then
I don't even think you need everything from part two. I think you just need the first part of the first sentence. So what part one will now read include structures that do not require further consideration. I think that's all you're going to see, because you don't need the for example part. That's a specific example to part two, right? Ron, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, that's what I am. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so your new part one is just going to read include structures that do not require further consideration, period.
Okay.
And then your new part two, you're just going to take out, delete the non-significant.
Right. I think that's beautiful, Winona. I think you got the.
I think it captures the intent. I think the intent was all there. I think that's exactly what you meant. And just digging into the technicalities of those
Mhm.
definitions. And I'm sorry to come so late to the table.
No, that's good, Michelle. That's
Better
why
late than ever. We
Yeah,
gotta,
that's why we have you.
look at it sometime. Okay. All right. So it seems like we're in agreement on that change. Were there any other comments about this list or any suggestions or?
I had just one other minor thing on the very first page, the last line of the first paragraph. I think we should just add in the word advisory to environmental council, since I know you're talking about the past actions occurred by the council, but maybe just to keep everything consistent with our new name. So yeah, it's on the very first page, first paragraph.
Well, I disagree. I don't think we should say environmental advisory council because that didn't exist in those.
Yeah. I'm going back and forth with it, but I'm just trying to keep people from getting confused on like the new name of things. So
Okay, we could say
yeah, I guess that's fine, because we're gonna have a stamp on here, right, with our concurrent state. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then just disregard that comment.
Okay.
But other than that, I know, Dean, you guys have been before us before, and we've looked at this list. So, thanks for working with us and getting it into the shape that it is.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help. Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciated all the thoughts, the consideration you gave to our critiques of the earlier thing. And next time, make sure Michelle reads it too. I mean, earlier, Michelle, because you would have caught it. You didn't have an opportunity to look at it earlier. Okay, well, great. Seeing where we are, unless there's any further discussion from anybody else in the room, I would entertain a motion.
We'll move to approve as amended. Or move to approve, moving this to the council for a recommendation of concurrence.
Thank you, Onana. And I saw Makaalo. Was that a second?
Yes, second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, it's unanimous. No need for a roll call vote. Thank you all very much for your good work looking at this. Dean, thank you. Yeah, if you can get that revised wording to us.
Okay.
And then I'll just read it when we're in the meeting.
Okay.
That should work good. So this is going to be a motion to the council. Our approval here is a motion to the council to approve your list as amended. And all we have to do is explain the amendment.
Okay, perfect. I'll work on it now and send it over.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And Dean, Chair, if you don't mind if I just jump in. So our meetings today are slightly a half hour later than normal. So the full council's meeting again at 1:30 rather than 1. So if you wanted to join in, the exemptions committee is up, it'll probably be about 5 to 10 minutes into the agenda.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. We'll see you then.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, great. Okay, now we'll move on to the second list before our council today from the Hawaii Public Housing Authority. This list was received a while back and reviewed by me. I had some comments on it and they made some amendments on it, kind of dealing with some of our standard issues that we have. We're trying to get everybody in line with the lighting issues, complying with lighting. And for the Hawaii Public Housing Authority, because they're a state agency, then, they have to comply with that anyway, but we're just trying to make it explicit. It's more important for our county agencies because that law doesn't apply to them. And Hakeem, I don't know if we're down in the weeds with these changes that Becky and Ronald were working with, but thanks to you and your staff for addressing those. What we're here today to discuss is whether we should recommend this to the council for publication in the environmental notice for a 15-day nominal comment period. And then theoretically, people will read the list and make some comments on it. And if they see anything that looks a little off or that makes them disturbed, then they'll give a heads up to us and we can talk those over with you and see if there's some solution for it. Kind of like the process we just went through. First, maybe I'll ask Hakeem or Ronald if you just either or both of you want to make any statements about this.
Thank you. Why don't I just start briefly? The name is Hakeem and I'm the executive director here with the Housing Authority. Thank you for allowing us the time this morning, this afternoon already. As you may know, the Public Housing Authority, we are the only statewide PHA for serving the state of Hawaii. We were established 87 years ago in 1935 by the territory of Hawaii with the mission to provide housing, affordable housing, economic opportunity, and suitable living for the low-income families. Currently, we serve about 45,000 tenants in a variety of different programs, such as Section 8 and others, but specifically for our buildings and our units, the federal and state low-income housing, we serve about 20,000 individuals. Our public housing properties average about 50 years of age. With us today is also Ran Sato. He's from HHF Planners. He's assisting us on the update of our exemption list. And with your permission, I'll let him introduce himself and take it from there. He will know plenty more than I would.
Thank you. So again, my name is Ronald with HHF Planners. We're just assisting HPHA on the update of their exemption. Their last one was in 1989. So it is a good time for them to update the exemption list and to help them, because you have the new rules. So we help them put together a draft, and I'm here to answer any questions the committee has.
Okay, well, great. We appreciate you bringing your expertise and assisting the agency in a really old list. And Hakeem, we really appreciate, of course, the work that your agency does. It's really important to the state. And what we try to do is assist agencies in fulfilling their duties under Chapter 343, always considering the environment. And, it's not your core mission, but I know it's part of your mission to do that. And thank you so much for paying attention to this.
Thank you.
Committee members, do we have any comments on the list?
Yeah, I'll go first if anybody doesn't want to. Ron, were we provided a Word document of the list? Because I do actually have some kind of nitpicky, just section changes and that kind of stuff that might just be easier to do.
We have one, yeah, I think I didn't it go out with the agenda? It was supposed to.
I think everything was PDF, so I was just wondering if there
Oh,
there was
yeah,
a
that,
Word
did
doc.
that get PDF too?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Mine is, yeah, the copy I have. I do have a Word copy.
okay.
And Ronald's in this room, so he can't, you probably don't, you don't have your laptop, do you?
No, yeah, it's okay. I mean, I don't know if it's easier to do it during the comment period to come back, but I mean, I can go over a couple of things. I mean, the first paragraph, I think the section reference, the first word should be section rather than chapter, and it's 343.6A2. So, small stuff like that. I think in this case, in that first sentence, we would use Environmental Advisory Council since you're talking about the current, what we're authorized
Yes,
to do.
absolutely.
Yeah, in the second sentence where you say specific types of actions, I think it should be plural. And then, the last paragraph, that last sentence, you guys have HPHA at any time may also request that the new exemption type be added or that an existing one be amended. I'm almost inclined to actually delete this whole last sentence. The reason being, you folks just request to us to concur. I mean, if you want to add or change a exemption type, that's really kind of up to the agency to do, right? You folks have the ability to change your list when you want. It's really just the concurrence that you're coming to us for in terms of the public vetting process and basically showing that this is kind of like a peer reviewed list right before it goes out to the public. So in terms of process, I kind of don't think that last sentence is needed.
I'm sorry, is that, what page is that on?
This is on page 1. It's the very last sentence on page 1 of that last paragraph. It says,
Right, okay.
yeah, so I'm just thinking in terms of, for that reason that I stated, but also the reference to HR 11-201. So you folks don't know this, Hakeem, but we're actually in the process of repealing our procedural rules and going towards policies and procedures. So I don't want you guys citing to a rule that we're going to get rid of in any event. And that rule, I think in particular, has to do with petitions to the council for rulemaking, which is a little bit different. So my personal feel is that you can actually just delete that last sentence.
I agree that just delete that last sentence. Anybody
Okay.
else? Committee members, are you okay with that suggestion? And also the previous suggestions that Onana made about section, I didn't even know that. So glad we have a lawyer here. And yeah, specific types of actions probably better, yeah.
Yeah, and then on top of page 2, it says pursuant to these administrative rules. I mean, maybe just say pursuant to HAR Title 11, Chapter 200.1. Just
Yeah.
for clarity. And yeah, so those are kind of my cleanup edits. I think, I'll turn it over. Well, I guess, sorry, I had one more. On type 4, this is on page 5, which I believe we're still under part 1. Yeah, so part 1, type 4. Okay, sorry. Let's say page 5. Item 10, conduct removal of unexploded ordnance. I'm just wondering if that should be a part 2. Just because of the nature of the work being done, and excuse my ignorance for not really knowing the process for removing unexploded ordnance, but it sounds like something that could have potential impacts.
Yeah, it occurs in 2 circumstances. One is a systematic one where you sweep a property, you hire somebody supervised by the Corps of Engineers usually to go sweep a property because you suspect there's something out there. And they actually go through NEPA to do this, or not NEPA, it's a CERCLA to do this. And that's the equivalent of NEPA, except for those under CERCLA, you're able to do it without NEPA. And the other is responding to things that you find. You find a hand grenade in a playground, you don't have time to go through NEPA, and you just remove it. That's sort of an emergency action, which it probably doesn't matter if it's part 1 or part 2 because it happens. you know, on those type of emergencies, we usually ask people to document it later in an exemption notice. That's part of our rules. I think that's an interesting question. Perhaps it's one that we could, oh, now, if you wouldn't like if you wouldn't mind actually making a formal comment on this during the comment period,
Okay.
including the things you said, and then this one too, which, you know, maybe we'll all have to think about, and including the agency, think about how they want to handle that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, you know, Rana and, oh, sorry, go ahead. If you're gonna respond to that. Hakeem.
Oh, it's okay. The director, yet you're gonna say something?
Go ahead, Ron. I was just gonna say that we did sweep the properties that we currently have.
Mhm.
So
We have nothing that-
I think, you know, most of the changes are relatively minor. So I think it's fine in making the changes. We can make the changes now instead of waiting for comments to get, you know, to get them. We can, because I took the, I took the notes. I have your comments. The
Well,
last
you know,
one-
I don't think you need to. I mean, we kind of asked them to do that for their process, HHFDC, because it's going to be, you know, approved right now. But, you know, there's possibly going to be other comments. So I don't want to put you guys through that last minute
Okay.
exercise. You know, we'll just, we have been in the past amenable to having a list go out that we say we have some little things here and there that we would prefer to see cleaned up, but let it go out for comment. We don't require it. Quite often there's a bunch of typos and things. And things like this where the references aren't quite correct. So, you know, I think we can, you know,
Okay.
let's see what happens here.
And I think moving, you know, the UXO to part 2, I think, you know, that should be fine.
Okay.
As the director mentioned, you know, they do have, you know, the Corps has been doing studies and they do have sweeps and whatnot. Yeah, like you mentioned, there's regulations in place and procedures in place already. So this is
Yeah.
just for whether if you do find, if you have to do an EA, and what we're saying is, no, it should be exempt. There's already, you know, procedures and.
Yeah, that's the big picture.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think the gut reaction between the part 1, part 2, right, as you folks know, the whole reason of doing this is for part 1 exemptions. There's no exemption notice filed, but
Right,
for
right.
part 2, you do, right? So I think even for the agency, it's something that could be potentially serious, that this is more cover for you folks, right? Where you folks did the exemption notice, it gets published, and then, you know, you have the 120-day period that somebody could be able to challenge. You have an actual date where it starts from that publication versus, you know, if you didn't do an exemption notice, it's whenever the person finds out. That's when the 120 days starts, right? So yeah, I think just for something that's a little bit more serious, it's cover for you folks, but also to show, you know, it gets vetted, it's been put out. Then if somebody really has a comment or whatnot, they can, you know, they can go and talk to the agency about it and discuss, you know, whether or not an EA would actually be appropriate in that case. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's fine, but I don't know if HH wants to wait 120 days before removing it. If they find something because of residents and
Sure.
children, so they might have to go in and, like Ron said, you know, have it properly removed and then.
Oh,
come
there's
back.
there's no requirement to wait. It's just the statute of limitations, you know, will have already started. So, you know, you've given the public constructive notice. And, you know, if Carol Cox is interested, you know, he can call you up about it. Okay. So, you know, that is a great suggestion on Onauna's part. It really does provide you more cover. And it also documents it for later. It's in the file. You guys considered it. And it for people that come after you, you know, they have some paperwork to go on. So an exemption notice can be super helpful.
Sure.
We have someone else joining us, Randy Chu, it looks like.
Yes, Randy Chu, HHFTC.
Okay. You're late to the party, Randy. We passed that one out with a recommendation to for concurrence to the council, but the council is going to take it up at roughly about 1:40. if you
Okay.
want to join. Dean will be there.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then I just add the I in ordinance when you move it to part two, which is just.
Or, no, ordinance doesn't have an I.
Really?
No,
Different kind of ordinance.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know
There's the
that.
law and then the bombs.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's ordinance as opposed to ordinance.
Right.
We all learn something every day.
Cool.
Yeah.
Played with ammunition with children.
I
Are
don't
there
even
any-
use that word anymore.
I'll bet not. I'll bet not.
What, do we have any other comments about the list or anything? I mean, knowing that, of course, we can, if you want to really have a chance to review it, there's going to be a 15-day review period, assuming that it gets passed by us and the council. So this isn't your last bite at the apple, but is there anything pressing that anybody sees that we should make the agency aware of at this?
I just have one more question to the agency, I guess, for the type 8, well, I guess let me compare it to type 4 for minor alterations and conditions of land. You folks have land subdivision and consolidation, and there's a limit to 1 acre or less. So I think that makes sense to me. Then type 8 just generally says subdivision and consolidation of real property. So, for an, typically, and my experience is primarily on the applicant side, larger subdivision would actually typically trigger 343. So I'm just curious, and Ron and Michelle, you probably have better knowledge on this, if just subdivision generally is appropriate for an exemption here. And, maybe if, Hakeem or Ron, you can tell us, I guess, for this type 8, what it's intended to cover in terms of size of subdivision.
Type 8, you said, on
Yeah,
page,
page 7. So this is still listed under part 1. So type
What
8,
pa-
number 5,
what page is that?
page 7.
Page 7. Okay.
And this is my final question and comments.
Yeah, it's funny. It's listed. Yeah, twice here. Cause it's,
5.
yeah, it's up in 5. Is it at 5 or?
It's in part
4.
4 on page 5, but with that one, I read it to be a limitation for 1 acre or less subdivisions, which,
It's all-
which I think is
Also
fine.
type 11 or number 11.
Yeah, under type 4, right? So I'm okay with that listing because again, there's a limit as to size, right? So there's not too much you can necessarily do with 1 acre, but my question was to the type 8 on page 7 and wondering if there is a limitation on the subdivision. I mean, when you folks go in for your subdivisions, I'm wondering, are you talking about 50 acres, 60 acres, and in what case would it be appropriate for a housing project to be doing some kind of environmental review in this instance where the government's doing it?
Well, this type is for administrative type activities. Subdivisions, if you're already, if it was a private, you wouldn't have to do an EA just for a subdivision. It's more of a county processing thing. But it's more of an administrative, because you still have to go through the county process. And again, this is just whether you need to do an EA to get the subdivision, because before you get to that point, development would have had to gone through some kind of environmental review or entitlement process to get the approvals before you can proceed to subdivision. So we can take a look at that. I also want to comment, when we put this together, we also look at all the other exemption lists that were approved previously. So, some of the other ones may have had that in there. So, it's just, try to be consistent with, some prior ones. But we can, sure, as a comment, we can take a look at that one.
Yeah, we do understand that, Ronald, and so something done in 1989 probably had a kind of different.
Oh, no, not the 89, but and putting together, we look at the more recent ones over the last 6
Yeah.
months to a year that have passed, and So a lot
Right.
of that kind of, so it's just, I guess if the others, if the other agencies have them, as
Right.
well, and,
And I think for us too, we do try to ask the agency specific questions depending on what they're doing. So, if it's an agency that's dealing solely with utilities, subdivision might not be as an issue for us, but knowing you folks are doing, full on housing developments, we may ask slightly different questions. So yeah, if you guys can just maybe take another look at it and provide us, at our next meeting, just with your thoughts on a situation of how this exemption would be used. I think that helps us to conceptualize it. We're not saying, okay, no, you can't do it, right? Again, this is your list. We just wanted to understand a little bit more for ourselves, in what context you're using this, and about the scale that you would be providing for this exam, or you would use this.
Okay.
And I wonder if the type 8 gives a hint at that with the continuing administrative activity. So is it the case where a project's already X far way down a process, and so then you wouldn't, it would be exempt because you're this far along? Maybe that's the case. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, some of the subdivision stuff that's come to us has been from the city and county DTS, Department of Transportation Services, where they're, rounding out corners and things like that. That really are pretty trivial that Winona talked about. And then, but subdividing for housing obviously is a different matter. It kind of all depends on where you are in the process. Ron, like you said, there's on all EA has already been done, and all you're doing right at this point is just subdividing. Maybe a slightly different subdivision plan than was proposed in the EA or something, or actually following through with it.
Yeah, and from a practical side, HPHA, they're not like a private developer, so they don't have very large properties where they're going to have to subdivide it into all individual house lots. And it's, there are 70 plus federal housing projects, and they're all pretty much set, and there's not a need to really subdivide. But it's part of all the listing of other items that you have in the exemption list that all the agencies have and listed. So that's why it's kind of included too. But like I said, we'll work with HPHA and we'll take a look at that.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, we'd appreciate that. And just for process, we're gonna, if we approve this to get released and the Environmental Advisory Council concurs, then it'll be out for 15 days, starting in the next available environmental notice. And we'll send you any comments. And Les, that's always tricky, yeah, but they got to come into you or Tom, I assume.
Oh, no, they come into our general mailbox, and then we pick it up there.
Okay, and you'll send them to me, and you'll send them to the agency, or somehow we'll get them to you. And then, great. And so then you guys will have a chance to look at the comments yourselves and make your own updates at that point. If you say, hey, boy, that was a really great point, we really should change that. You come to us with an amended list in your next in the next time you come see us, and it's up to you. And again, this process is completely up to you. It's your list. You figure out what you want to do with it. You bring it to us, and we provide comments. We concur or not. It's still your list, even if we don't concur. Our concurrence is kind of like the good housekeeping stamp of approval. Honestly, that's about all it is.
But we have the list revised already. We have the list updated and revised with all your comments already by then.
Yeah. You'll have everything. It'll be good. So, okay. Were there any more comments?
Chair, the only thing I would say, and I will say that I view this particular list and the previous list with a different lens because of the purpose and the mission. I will declare, certain things I certainly wouldn't like to see, no matter who's doing it. But there was a note of up to a 20% increase in density and that kind of thing. In other circumstances, I might have, looked at that a little bit more critically. But in this situation, I am not commenting on that.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe there's a reason I'm not just don't know it. Is there a reason the numbers are not consecutive for the types?
They probably are in, they probably have no instances of that type under part 1 or part 2.
Yeah.
Right, it's structured where those that are,
To match.
you know, yeah, following your type, you know, in your regulations, your type 1 through, yeah.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah. You're doing a deep dive today, Michelle. So, yeah, thank you. Okay, any other comments? Any comments from anybody else in the room here that we haven't asked yet? Okay, I think you're running out a little bit out of time. Can I ask for a motion?
I'll move to recommend that the HPHA list be concurred with it, or no, excuse me. Be published in the environmental notice for 15-day comment period.
Yeah, we recommend to the council or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, that motion. Okay.
Second.
Is there a second, Makal again. Okay. Any final discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, unanimous. No need to do a roll count. And so thank you guys very much for presenting this list to us. We will definitely have some comments. I think you know what they're going to be already, but we'll make them in writing to you. You know, for your consideration for a possible amendment to the list. And then I'm assuming, of course, here that it will get approved by the council, but that's what usually happens. So, but to find out, you know, so that you won't be in suspense, come to our meeting that's going to start in about 10 minutes, and you guys will be on the agenda for, you know, like I said, about 1:40, 1:45, somewhere in there.
I'll be
Thanks,
here,
guys.
yeah. I'll
Okay.
just hang here.
Okay, that's right. That's why you went there. Thank you. I wish we were there to join you, man. We like to meet in person, but we can't do it.
Yeah, nice to see you guys anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you
Okay,
very
again,
much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Hakeem. Thank you guys for undertaking this exercise. It's important. We appreciate it. And we'll see you in a bit.
Thank
you. Okay, folks, I think our final agenda item, go back to my agenda, is simply approval of the minutes and then next meeting date, etc. Do you guys have the minutes in front of you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Move to approve the minutes of the previous exemption meeting.
Okay, any second to that?
I'll second, but for purposes of discussion.
Okay. Yeah, please. Yes, let's discuss now. Okay.
Okay, couple of kind of small edits on under item number 2 on the minutes.
Hold on just a second. Sorry. Let me bring the Word file up to make this a little easier. Okay, thank you. All right. Go ahead, Onana.
Yeah, so under item number 2, the second sentence that begins with Michael. I recommend just adding, you know, Hinazumi because
Inazumi? Okay.
yeah, just because, you know, even though Mike Tulang wasn't there, we still have him listed, just so that it's clear who said what.
Sure.
And then the third line from the bottom of that same paragraph says, Onana moved, Michelle seconded to approve recommendation to EAC to publish list in environmental notice. I was just gonna add this super small in the environmental notice.
Okay.
Since that's part of the title. And then on the second page, under item number 4, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 down.
Sixth line.
Six lines, yeah, sorry. The sentence starts on line 5. Ron asks if the pig might look at whether we can interpret the statute to compel agencies to make rules. I think that should be exemption lists. I think that's what we were talking about. We can't compel the agencies to do their own rulemaking, right? I think we were talking about whether or not we can make them do exemption lists.
Was that it?
Yeah, I mean, my recollection of the discussion was that we're trying to find ways to get agencies to participate in making exemption. That's not, we have no authority to compel other agencies to do rulemaking.
Okay, we were, yeah.
So I just think you need to
we-
change rules to exemption lists.
Yeah, maybe I'll go back and look at that.
Okay,
Because we were also talking about the person that suggested that that exemption list should be done by rulemaking,
mm-hmm.
and whether that would be legitimate, and whether we can make other agencies do rules. So
Oh, okay, well, maybe I misunderstood. If that's the,
let
if
me,
that was the actual discussion, then, you know, disregard my recollection. Yeah, I remember talking about that. So I see now what you meant.
yeah, let me go back. I probably shorthanded this quite a bit. Okay,
But yeah, that's it on my end. I mean, great job in doing the minutes. Thank you so much for taking such detailed minutes.
okay. Any other comments from other members?
No, except thank you. I mean, I agree, they're detailed and they're helpful. They will be helpful. All of these are not, you know, for naught.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Kind of a pain in the ass to do, but you know, what are you gonna do? So, okay. If we can take that, if we can take that, that you guys can trust me to figure that exemption list rules things out. They're amended, the minutes are now amended per our committee's recommendation.
Move to approve as amended.
Okay. Second? Michelle, okay, great. All in favor? Okay, great. Unanimous again. We can dispense with that. All right, we'll get these finalized and sent to Les to put out on our website.
Chair, I just have one comment in general that I didn't particularly want to make it council, although I could, which is, I do note that with the two lists that we had today, the format differed with how they did them. And I preferred the housing finance one. I preferred seeing the part 1 and part 2 in each item. It really helped me. I didn't have to go flipping back. I could compare what they thought was more critical or required for
Yeah, that's
examination.
interesting observation.
Personally, I preferred it.
It's
I
interesting.
don't think I'd ever seen a list like that before.
Well, early on, we kind of gave they gave the agencies the latitude. Some wanted to do it one way, some wanted to do it another. So we actually have them. There's some examples out there, and they're kind of the cows out of the barn on that. But
No, I'm just saying I liked it. It was easier.
no, I understand. It's a good observation. How did the other members of the committee feel?
You know, it does make it easier when they're in the same category, but you know, I'm not inclined to. I'm just happy the agencies are doing it, you know, because we know at the end of the day, it's what's easy for them and for their guys in the field. So I'm not inclined to tell them to change it.
No, that's not where I was. That's not what I
Yeah,
was saying. I was just pointing out that for me, as a lay person looking at this stuff, that just makes it's simpler.
right.
well, you know, what I can do is if agencies come to me and ask, how do you like it? I can say, you know, we kind of like to have them by type, and then part 1 and part 2, type 1, part 1, part 2. Because that's what the committee seems to sort of prefer here. If it's fully formed and they bring it to me, I'm not going to say anything. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I'm not asking for that. I'm just pointing it out. I frankly have never seen one like that before that I remember.
Yeah. Well, I've seen them. I've seen agencies actually switch it when they had it really messed up. The first time they switched it. Well, okay. Our next meeting. I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna have another meeting in December.
Okay.
There is an agency out there who wants to get their list, but they haven't finished it. Les, who was it again?
I'm sorry, it just slipped my mind.
Yeah, me too, but we told them that it was pretty messed up and we couldn't, we didn't want to accept it the way it was, so we told them to go back, it was,
Oh, it was DOE, the School Property Division.
that's right, it was them, so they never responded to you, did they, Les?
No, they didn't, not yet.
Yeah, okay, so it could very well be that we do not have any business next month, but we
Okay.
could. So, I'm thinking probably we'll not have a meeting in December. Just to let you know, okay? We really got to scoot here 4 minutes to the next meeting. I'm just gonna go ahead and adjourn this there's no objections?
No
Okay.
objection. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys. Thanks, Les and
Okay,
Jody.
thank you, thanks
And our
everybody.
guests here.
Thanks, Les. Thanks, Ron.
Okay, see
Okay.
you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.